Hello, and welcome to the Family Histories Podcast, the show for those of us sat quietly in libraries, archives, and spare rooms all around the world, tirelessly piecing together our collective social and family history. My name is Andrew Martin, I'm a family historian, and I'll be your host. In this episode, The Incarcerated, we'll be hearing about a man from Japan who was detained in a US concentration camp during World War II, and then we're looking for reasons as to why he was in Mexico in the 1920s. So, put down that old passenger list, grab a cuppa, and let's meet our guest. My guest today is an award-winning author, community journalist and public historian whose work has appeared in such places as the Smithsonian Magazine, San Francisco Chronicle and Seattle's International Examiner. Amongst her awards are those from Tacoma Arts Commission and the Tacoma Historical Society. And she has co-authored a graphic novel, worked on permanent exhibitions in California and on essays for the Japanese American National Museum. More recently, though, she has written A Place for What We Lose, A Daughter's Return to Tule Lake, detailing her father's time in an American World War II camp. So, before she thinks of another new project to go and work on, I should welcome my guest. It's Tamiko Nimura. Hello, Tamiko. Welcome to the Family Histories Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Now, we usually like to start with the same kind of question, and that is, what was it that first got you interested in researching history?
Ooh, yes. I have been interested in history for quite some time, partly because of my family's deep involvement in World War II, Japanese American history. Approximately 10 of my family members were incarcerated in American concentration camps. And it's something that I've thought about for decades, but had not started writing about it until I was in college.
Okay. So what inspired you to take this, I guess, kind of deeply personal, closely linked story and turn that into a book?
Well, I had studied Japanese American literature and Asian American literature for a while, but it was really when I lost my job as a professor of English that I remembered my father's unpublished manuscript had been sitting in my desk drawer for some time. Now, the joke, right, is that all English professors have an unpublished novel in their desk drawer, but I had my father's book and I wanted to do something different with it than I'd read before, something that would catch people's imaginations and help them to actually remember the story of Japanese American incarceration. So in avoiding my grief over losing my career, I decided to dive more deeply into a more personal grief, thinking about my father's loss. And then that became the larger losses of the Japanese American community.
Wow. So what was your family's attitude into kind of digging into the past and kind of bringing this kind of into the present?
Well, a lot of Japanese American families had not spoken of this history to their children or grandchildren, but my family was actually really different. They talked about it a bit at family gatherings. My kids interviewed them for different school projects. I did an interview for one of my school projects.
Okay.
And I'd been given a bunch of family materials, including my dad's manuscript, but I also had my aunt's scrapbook and other things. So the family was really very supportive of this dive into our history.
At what sort of age was this diary written from? Was he an adult or a child? Or?
So my father's manuscript was written, and it was a memoir. He wrote it when he was an adult.
Okay.
But really mostly from the point of view of a child, because he was 10 years old through about 14 when he was incarcerated.
Right. Okay.
So he really loved to read. He loved to write. But this was special.
And did you find yourself kind of researching this story beyond the information within your family? And what kind of records could you access?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Really, my father's manuscript was written before a lot of things had come to light in the larger American consciousness. There was a national campaign for redress and reparations, which happened really partly in the 1970s, but culminated in the early 1980s, just before he passed away. And so
Right.
he missed that particular opportunity to speak publicly about his incarceration. So there were lots of things. There were oral histories, one that my aunt did and that my uncle did. There's a wonderful repository online called Densho, which has collected a lot of Japanese American oral histories, as well as digitized a bunch of artifacts.
Okay.
I had my aunt's scrapbook, which I mentioned, my oldest aunt's scrapbook, and photo albums, lots of material about the incidents that my father had portrayed in the book, but had not quite had maybe the context or the larger understanding.
Yeah, and I guess the hindsight as well, that maybe you could add in what you were writing alongside it.
Yes, absolutely.
And how did you find your voice in this book?
That was actually an easier part. I think the trick was really to balance the two. I had been writing creative nonfiction for quite some time, personal essays, community journalism. And so I had my own writerly voice, but I had quite the internal debate about how much of my father's manuscript should I include in this memoir, A Place for What We Lose. I had my dad's entire several hundred-page manuscript, but I also had things that I wanted to contextualize for the reader, and I wanted to select particular sections that stood out to me, particularly as a daughter, as a descendant. And I actually wrote a whole one-act play, which is not in the book.
Okay.
Between these sort of competing voices and selves to try to figure out how much of my father's manuscript do I include. It's such a powerful story, the incarceration story, right? And but my sort of artistic goal was to have it really be an intergenerational dialogic book, right? I didn't want to just tell my father's story. I wanted to tell his story, our family story, and contextualize it and respond to what my father had written. So between, in the play, between the daughter and the descendant, the daughter actually won. The daughter said, "No, I'm going to pick the sections that I think are the most compelling." The descendant was trying to play the valiant historian role and said, no, we have to include the entire book. But the daughter said, "No, my dad, I knew my dad the best, and my dad would not want me to make my story small. My dad would really want me to do what I wanted with his book."
Yeah.
And it's not like the book is, his entire book is lost, right? We have his entire book. His entire book is in the Stanford archives at the Hoover Institution, and so could be accessible to people who want to read the entire book.
Right. Okay. And presumably you have a copy of that.
That's correct.
This whole topic of incarceration of Japanese people or Japanese Americans is an area of history for me as a Brit that I'm totally unaware of, and maybe that's just me and the people that I know just haven't talked about it.
Wow.
Or maybe it's just so much of an untold story.
Well, yeah, I guess it really does depend on who you talk to, right? If you talk to most Japanese Americans, they'll say, we've been telling our story for decades.
Yeah.
But also that it depends on who is willing to listen, right? Or who is willing to know and spread that story. And regionally, it also depends too, right? On the West Coast of the United States, we were really quite powerfully impacted, right, by the incarceration.
Yeah.
Whereas if you move, into the Midwest or even the East Coast, there will be folks who have never heard of the incarceration at all. And I've been told also that even larger public history institutions or historic preservation institutions that are centered on the East Coast of the United States will kind of brush off the incarceration as a kind of blip in American history. Like, oh, it just happened out West, or it just happened sort of briefly,
Right.
or it was a small section of the population. 125,000 doesn't strike me as small, but that's me.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah, so I do think
Wow.
that in some areas, it's absolutely a lesser known, untold part of the American story, but it really shaped quite a bit of certainly who I am and really of American history as well.
Wow. And how long were you writing this?
Oh, so I've been writing my book, A Place for What We Lose, for about 15 years.
Ooh, okay.
When I say 15 years, I don't mean that I was working steadily on it for 15 years.
Yeah,
There were
just
years,
over 15 years.
yes, over 15 years. There were years when I'd put it away, just thinking, I just can't do it anymore.
Sure.
I can't take it any farther. I don't know what to do with it. But then during the 2020 lockdown in the pandemic, I enrolled in a class that forced me to visit the project weekly, come up with parts of it. And I'd written parts of the book off and on. I'd struggled with the structure of the book for a very, very long time. And even in the year before, like last year, it went through two major structural revisions to try to balance all of that out.
Wow. Well, many of us genealogists say that we'll one day write that book about our families. So what advice can you give us, including myself, as to get started?
How wonderful. What a great question. I think that to follow your own curiosity is probably the best advice that I can give. That what you find curious or interesting will find its audience of readers. And if you're able to convey that curiosity, pursue that curiosity to the very best of your abilities, that will be what you can do. And, to borrow techniques from other genres of writing, right? You might not want to do the sort of strict, here's my family document, and here's the introduction, here's my family document, and here is what I've concluded about it. There are lots of models now, I think, for family memoir that include different kinds of structure and different kinds of genre. So mine has things like lists and mock encyclopedia entries, things that hopefully will help provide context that might not be quite so straight history book.
Yeah. And you also co-wrote a graphic novel.
That's right.
We Hereby Refuse Japanese-American Resistance to Wartime Incarceration. How did that process differ?
Oh my goodness, in almost every way. In that, I had a co-author, and there were two artists illustrating. So there were four of us working on this project, and we had a community advisory committee and an institution who hired us to answer to. So really, it was quite a deeply collaborative process. It took us only 4 years, but really is one where there were different kinds of creative control that I had over the project. Whereas with this project, I had a lot more creative control, and I felt a different ability to play with this material. It was my family material, right?
Personal. Yeah.
We do deal with one character in the graphic novel who is a family member of mine, my uncle, but he was one of several main characters that we worked with.
When you were working on that book, did you sort of know that you'd be writing A Place for What We Lose when you were doing that? Or did it kind of inspire you to get on and write it?
Well, again, that 15 years included a couple of books along the way that I published.
Yeah.
So I published my first book, which was a oral history and biography, deeply collaborative with its subject, and the graphic novel. So I think along the way, I had been writing, bits and pieces of my memoir. And really, the historical research that I was able to conduct for the graphic novel really worked itself into the memoir. There were parts where I was working on the graphic novel and went, oh, okay, now I understand this incident that my father referred to in his memoir. And so I
Right.
was able
Okay.
to
Yeah.
provide, I think, better, deeper context for the reader in this case.
Yeah. And in your researching, were you able to research back far enough that would perhaps take you to researching with Japanese records? Have you done much of that at all?
That part, not so much. And I'm not fluent in Japanese. I do know some
Ah,
Japanese, but I can't read it very well at all. And it's quite a complex language to learn.
yes.
So yes, eventually, hopefully, I'll get to more of my Japanese records. But I do have my grandfather's Japanese passport,
Oh,
which is written partly in English, partly in Japanese. So hopefully I'll get to go farther back into the archives there. But I believe that that's also an interesting process that I haven't quite embarked on yet.
so if you have his passport, presumably you've got photograph of him?
Yeah, yeah, I have a photograph of him.
Oh, nice. So what's your favourite or most useful record type that you like to work with in research?
Ooh, oh, and another wonderful question. I do love family photographs in part because it's lovely to see family resemblance and to really see what people looked like then, what they were wearing. But to work with, it is probably written accounts and or oral histories. There's a lot of great material that I love working with and pulling significant details from,
Yeah.
or important quotes, things like that. Maybe it's just because I am at heart a writer and not a visual person.
And is there anything that you'd like to see improve within our genealogy or public history community or industry?
Certainly, Japanese American history has quite a bit of public archives and a lot of wonderful people doing wonderful work in that area. I think my point of concern right now, honestly, is the National Archives in Washington, D.C. Given that we are currently under a federal administration that is quite actively trying to both erase this history and repeat this history, I'm
Yeah.
really quite concerned for the future of the National Archives and larger federal archives. So I'm hopeful that different voices will prevail and we'll be able to keep our access to those archives, but also to be able to digitize the vast amount of archives that are still undigitized. I've heard that there are boxes and boxes still that have yet to be.
Probably the majority.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the majority, but it is quite a bit, which is kind of stunning to me because there's a lot, as there is.
Yeah. When you research your family tree, you never quite know what you'll find. Sometimes a record might look quite mundane, but dig a little deeper, perhaps a spelling mistake or an unexpected occupation or a nuance in terminology, and you might just find yourself on the trail of a much bigger story. Yes, it's now time for my guest to pick one of their relatives that they've researched and then tell their life story. So, Tamiko, who are you going to introduce us to?
My grandfather, Junichi Nimura.
Okay.
At least I think that's his last name.
Ooh, okay.
So my grandfather was born in Hiroshima, the prefecture of Japan in Hiroshima. And there are a lot of holes that I have about his history. There are places that I'm really excited to talk about, but there are lots of places where I really want to know more.
Okay. And so what sort of year was he born?
So he was born on August 4th, 1885.
Yeah.
And I have his passport here. I also have places where he went to elementary school, which is fascinating. But as I was researching for my book, A Place for What We Lose, I was talking to one of my aunts who is still alive, and she said, well, he was the second son and therefore would not have inherited much in Japan as a second son.
Okay.
So he may have basically married into a family, maybe the family Nimura, and taken that last name as his last name. So I do have, there's a record here where he lists a last name of Doi, D-O-I. So perhaps that is his original family name. I don't know for sure. But all the other records that I have pretty much have his last name as Nimura. He was born in 1885. And then I have very little, really like no records until 1925, where I have his passport issued to come to Mexico.
Right. Okay.
Which was another surprise to me. I thought that he would have come through Hawaii, as a lot of Japanese immigrants did.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is a manifest showing his passage on a ship to Hawaii. But then his passport was issued for going to Mexico. And then I have another official looking document from the Mexican government dated in 1926, saying that he could go to Sacramento, which is listed as his sort of place of residence.
Yeah.
The document is in Spanish, signed and sealed by various Mexican officials. So, yes. And then from there are lots of things that he did. He's really struggled to make a living in a lot of different places. So he had married, I believe, once before he married my grandmother. The first wife, it sounds like, not happy, had a very difficult time in the United States. And so he basically sent her back to Japan. And then he sent for my grandmother, who was a good 16 years younger than he was. They met and married through an exchange of photographs. She was basically called a picture bride.
Okay. What's the process for picture brides?
As far as I know, you basically sign up with a kind of, we'll call it a matchmaking sort of agency. And each one gets sort of details and photographs, and through the mail, you basically meet and arrange for a marriage, and then passage is arranged for the bride to come to the United States. And there were thousands of them.
Wow, it's sort of a old style Tinder.
Yes. Yes, nothing to swipe on, just a particular document. But yes, there were thousands of picture brides that the United States government allowed for a while to come to the United States before they cracked down on immigration from Japan. So my grandmother then was allowed to come. And she also struggled, but stayed in the United States, had eventually, I want to say there were 8 children. 6 of them lived past infancy. A couple of them did not. And the first 2 actually did not live through infancy. And then my oldest auntie was born. So anyway, my grandfather and grandmother struggled a lot. My grandfather had worked as a cook in a logging camp. They ran a laundry for a while and eventually became tenant farmers or sharecroppers. Again, not a great way to make a living and support that many children, but that was what they did.
Right.
So when World War II broke out, the family was quite shocked by the news that Japan had attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor, and basically started to get news that they were about to be incarcerated. And so they had to go through and dispose of whatever belongings they could not carry. They had to, I believe, maybe give away or sell their car and pack basically the belongings that they could carry into camp.
Wow.
The family then spent several years in incarceration or concentration camps. Your listeners might be a little shocked that I use the word concentration camp rather than something else, but that was actually what President Roosevelt called them.
Oh.
And they were distinct from, of course, the death camps that the Nazis administered.
Yeah.
But we say concentration camp because that was actually what they were used for. Anyway, My family then spent a few years in concentration camps. Early on in the process, my grandfather and grandmother decided to request repatriation to Japan, to go back to Japan. They had really just kind of given up. But at some point in that process, their oldest two children said, no, we don't want to go to Japan. And so they stopped the process and remained in the camp. But my grandfather was an outspoken man. He was quite the community leader slash rabble rouser slash troublemaker.
Oh, gosh.
He participated or led work stoppages, made fiery speeches when the military came to try to draft the younger second generation Japanese American men into the military. And there were informers inside the camps who were reporting all of this activity. And so the powers that be developed a case against my grandfather and got a presidential warrant for his arrest and came to the family barrack with the FBI to arrest him in front of the family. And they took him very swiftly to a local jail just a few miles away, held him for a couple of weeks, perhaps, without any process, and then whisked him swiftly away to Sharp Park, which is just south of San Francisco, a detention facility for Japanese immigrants. And he was there for a brief time. And then they moved him about a few thousand miles away to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where they kept him for another few months. In the meantime, my grandmother is back at Tule Lake, where they were being held as a family, just, with 6 kids by then, just wondering what is going on. How can I find out any information?
Yeah.
Eventually, my grandfather was released and sent back to the concentration camp in Northern California with the rest of the family.
At Tule Lake.
Yes, Tule Lake, that's right. After the war, they returned to tenant farming. My grandfather was a really complex person, had a very difficult time. They had lost just about everything, right? They came back. They had put their belongings into storage. And when they came back to the place where their belongings were stored, the padlock was gone and all their belongings were gone. So they were really poor before the war, and then they came back to almost nothing. And that was very hard on my grandparents.
Yeah.
My grandfather, I believe, had some issues with alcohol and I believe it was an accident where he had perhaps hit his head and died as a result of that accident. Oh, okay. So 1960 is when he passed away. So he was 75, but still had a pretty difficult life.
Wow. And do you know if he spoke much about what happened to him while he was away in his later life?
That I do not know. And my father does not say very much about it in his book, right, which recounts, that time. I believe it was, I believe my father was struggling in a few places while he was writing his own book. I believe he began his book as a tribute to his father. I believe he wrote it in the 1960s. My grandfather died in 1960.
Yeah. And
I think, a lot of people in my grandparents' generation were very much we can't do very much about it. Let's just, move on. Let's look forward. Let's not think about that terrible past.
Right.
And so I don't think that they talked very much about their experiences, especially my grandfather, who, was a very proud man and, had really missed his family while he was away. So I don't think he talked about his own imprisonment. But, eventually one of the places that I would like to go is Santa Fe, where he was incarcerated.
Yeah. And what became of your grandmother? Because obviously she went through a whole load with all of these children.
That's right.
Not knowing what's become of her husband, where he is, or perhaps even if he's still alive.
That's right. So I believe what happened is she relied on her children, the ones who spoke English as well as Japanese, to try to do some of the communication. So in my father's book, for example, he actually copied down a letter that my oldest aunt sent to the authorities saying, we think my father is here. Can we send him anything? When will he be back? What's going on? Those were things that my aunt could say, right, as an English speaking, young adult, but she would have been about 17.
Yeah.
Trying to take on responsibilities. So my grandmother, she lived into the 1970s. So I had, there are, pictures of me with her when I was very young. She died when I was about 3.
Yeah.
I know that she got to go back to Japan and visit her family.
Oh, wow.
I believe that was probably a very powerful experience. Mm. And really the siblings kind of shared her care, although my father was in her very final years, was the one who did some in-home care. And then when she had to be in an assisted living facility, came and, brought her home on the weekends.
Am I right in thinking that your father and his siblings were US citizens and yet they were still in this camp?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yes. I believe at least 2/3 of the 125,000 Japanese who were incarcerated were American citizens. And therefore, this is a massive violation of their civil liberties.
Yes.
And their birthright citizenship.
Wow. So inevitably then, there's a whole load of people around the world who experience this, who are still with us, who have these memories of this time.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yes, there are, so the first generation, right, my grandparents' generation, I believe those all of those folks have passed on. Yeah. And there are certainly a lot less of my father's generation still here, survivors. So a lot of us, I think, like to treat our survivors, right, with a great deal of care and compassion for what they endured for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So where's the best place for listeners to go to find out more about the book that you've written that includes your grandfather as well as your father?
That's wonderful. Thank you for asking. Let's see. My book is published by the University of Washington Press. It can be ordered wherever books are sold.
Lovely. And do you see any traits from your grandfather in yourself? What do you think that maybe has been passed through to you?
I really admire my grandfather for how outspoken he was. I wouldn't consider myself as outspoken, but I have tried to continue his legacy of speaking up for what I think is really what is right. My grandfather was also a great performer. He loved to dance and sing, and apparently perform a lot of great fiery speeches. So I'm an introvert, but I also do like public speaking in different formats for various audiences. And
how's your singing?
Oh, goodness. I can sing in a choir. We'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, my grandfather was also very resourceful. And I think that's something that has been passed on through our family, just trying to make do with what you have or be creative even with what you have.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tamiko, for sharing the life story of your grandfather. But I think it's now time for you to face the brick wall. If you're the kind of person who gives up easily, then genealogy is perhaps not the hobby or occupation for you, because you'll soon find yourself bumping into some annoying, stubborn brick walls. However, sometimes all it takes is a fresh idea, a hint, or just a clue to turn those brick walls to brick dust. And with this in mind, it's time for my guests to share one of their brick walls, in a hope that one of you, dear listeners, can help to solve it. Right, Tamiko, what have you got for us?
All right, well, I spoke earlier in the program about my grandfather going to Mexico, and then from there to El Paso, Texas. And I really want to know what my grandfather was doing in Mexico. I imagine that he was trying to find work. I imagine that he was really trying to maybe make a living, but he had somehow, listed Sacramento as his place of residence. But I've got this interesting tourist certificate dated in 1926 in Spanish that issued from the Mexican consulate saying that he could be there for a time. I want to know what he was doing in Mexico.
Oh, okay. Did he just take in the sights, or was he quietly working?
Right. Or was he, or both, right?
Was he expanding his singing career, maybe, and performing? Who knows?
Oh, yeah, maybe. It says here that they estimated that he would be in Mexico for 15 days, right? So like a 2-week tourist visa, perhaps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That it said he was admitted into Mexico, but like, when did he get there? How long was he really there? I wonder if he actually spent those 15 days or not. It's just such a mysterious document that I have here about him traveling to Mexico. And I know that a number of Japanese immigrants went kind of through Mexico to get into California. That was kind of a sort of immigration route that was more secret. But I really want to know more about that time.
So the tourist certificate, does that have a date on it? And also, question here, does it have his name on it as well?
It does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, this is so interesting. It says that he was married here. I do speak some Spanish, so I can see this. It said he was 41, it says, at this time, and that the date of the document is the 19th of November in 1926 in El Paso, Texas. That says that he was married, that he was a farmer, agricultor is what it says.
Okay.
Nobody was with him, and that his point of destination was Sabinal, Sabinal. And then there's a comma and then CHI, which might refer to maybe Chiapas, the part of Mexico, and then MEX. Sabinal, Chi, period, Mex, period.
Yep.
Punto de destino is what it says here. That's where he was supposed to go. Like, how did he figure this out? Why was he there? What was he doing there?
Oh, well, we do have quite a few listeners based in Mexico, at least. So I am crossing my fingers for this, that hopefully some of them can email in or message you and help us to decipher this document, and also help us, if there are further records somewhere that relate to this record, if they can help suggest where to find that. So what's the best way for listeners to contact you if they think that they have a research clue or idea?
Oh, amazing. So I do have an author website. That's tamikonimura.net.
Yeah. And
I have contact information there. And I'm on Blue Sky. I think it's just tamikonimura.bsky and so on. So I'm on Blue Sky as well.
Okay. We'll, of course, put links to those on this episode's description and show notes. But just before we move on from this section, I just want to clarify how to spell your grandfather's name.
Yes. Junichi is his first name, Junichi.
Yeah.
And then his last name is Nimura, Nimura. I don't think he would have had this particular name, but he actually gave himself an American middle name as well, which was Fred.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, Fred. I have no idea where that came from, but yes.
Okay.
And I don't see anything about his middle name in these early documents in the 1920s. And so he may have taken up that middle name perhaps after the war, right, as a lot of Japanese Americans did, to kind of help passage into American society.
Sure. Of course, listeners can head over to familyhistoriespodcast.com, where they can read this episode's show notes and send us a message, or they can just email us at hello@familyhistoriespodcast.com, and we'll pass the message along to Tamiko. Well, while our listeners grab another cuppa before getting stuck into their searches, it's just possible that I can help you with this, but you're going to need to follow me through to the garage.
All right.
Well, welcome, Tamiko, to the garage. And my secret time machine.
It's a what?
No, seriously, it's a secret time machine. Well, it's as secret as I can make it 11 seasons into a podcast, but thankfully, no one's put it on Google Maps yet.
It's quite a creation.
It sure is. Oh, and this is my assistant, Shandor Baturfi. He's a 200-year-old Hungarian poet. Shandor, this is Tamiko.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Shandor.
So, as I was saying, I wondered whether you'd like a little trip back in time to see if you can solve that brick wall for yourself. You could go and quiz Junichi to see why he's there.
Do you have insurance?
Insurance? Oh, you're the second person to ask about that. It's a time machine. You can just pop back in time if it goes wrong and do it again. Besides, the temporal insurance fraud would be rife. At a guess?
Just don't mess with time.
In what way?
The butterflies.
He means the idea that stepping on a butterfly could change the future.
Oh.
Clue, it will, just don't go stepping on them.
I'll be really careful.
It's okay, I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. So, if you take a seat over there, we'll get this set up. Now, when and where would you like to go to?
All right, I'd like to go to El Paso, Texas on the 19th of November in 1926.
Excellent choice. I'm sure you're going to have plenty of questions for him too. There we go.
It's good.
You'll need this.
What's that?
It's a temporal beacon. It's essentially your ride home. Just keep it with you at all times, and then when you're ready to come back, just tap that button on the top, and you'll be right back here.
This one?
Yep, that's the one. Okay, here we go. Tamiko Nimura, thank you, goodbye, and good luck.
Spot on. Almost.
What do you mean, almost?
She's on the roof.
Oh, well, they do have ladders in 1926. She'll be fine. The Family Histories podcast was presented and produced by me, Andrew Martin. My guest was the magnificent Tamiko Nimura, with John Spike as Shandor Baturfi. If you've enjoyed this episode, then why not share it with your friends, or even just tell a random stranger on the internet. Thanks for listening. Approximately no family historians were harmed in the making of this podcast.